Before I get started, let me first say that the decision to join MAOL was probably one of the best decisions that I've ever made in my life. Um, I can't say that with a high enough level of sincerity. I feel like in life we try to get better. You read books, watch videos, whatever, but for me anyway, nothing has compared to how much of a positive influence this program has been on me. Very thankful, to all the folks who made this program happen. At any rate, for this project, we're asked to go through our previous courses and pick 5 subjects, 5 topics that we wanted to touch on. And the methodology that I used wasn't anything too sophisticated. I went back into MAOL, and I just went back to each of the courses and really dug into them. I think that was a strength of the course, that we got to go back and kind of revisit all the stuff that we learned. Those 5 are, I'm just going to read them off to you here: emotional intelligence, leadership. I think of it as leadership on the ground level. We're going to talk about that. CSR, primarily the environmental aspect of that. We'll touch on that a little bit. Recruiting, and hiring, and the culture of businesses, and the relationship between leadership and culture. So we'll go ahead and get started here. The first one is emotional intelligence, and I'm going to read a definition of emotional intelligence that I came up with. Dr. London taught us to think for ourselves, and so I did. So here's my definition for emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the ability to identify and manage one's own emotions and the emotions of others. It's comprised of, but not limited to, 3 primary skills. Number 1 is emotional awareness, and this is the ability to identify one's emotions and identify the emotions of others. The second one, this is a big one, emotional application, the ability to harness emotions and apply them to tasks like critical thinking, problem solving, and conflict resolution. And the third here is emotional management. This is a big one. This is one of my favorites. Emotional management is the ability to regulate your own emotions as well as the emotions of others. So I'm going to read that one again. Emotional management is the ability to regulate your own emotions as well as the emotions of others. If you can't tell already, emotional intelligence was by far and away the most interesting topic for me. It's helped me a lot, in my personal life and in my career. It's helped me with my relationships, with my family and friends. And I think that the implications that it has for leadership are very far-reaching, as well. There's an example that I thought of, and this is one time when we were in class, and if you will, I want you to think of a time that you were very angry. And the example that I use is if you had, like a significant other that made you very angry, wronged you in some way. And if you really think back to that, if even those of you watching, if you take a moment to really think of something where somebody upset you badly, then you'll probably feel just a tinge in your stomach, and that's just a taste of the emotions that arose during that time. That's just a tiny taste. And when you think about anger, at least for me, when I'm very angry, the anger consumes me, or at least it used to. When a person is very angry, it's essentially like they're one with the anger. And the concept of emotional intelligence has taught me that if you try hard enough, you can essentially stand outside of an emotion like anger. So the anger is over here, and you're over here, almost watching it. You're not consumed by it, and it's incredibly difficult to do. If you've ever been that angry and tried to do it, and I'm not the kind of person that gets angry very often, but recently I had something come up that made me really angry, and for the first time, I was able to do that, and it was such a neat experience. And it shows that when you're angry, it's not who you are. It's something that's happening to you. It's an emotional hijacking, and that was just kind of a cool little tidbit. And I think when you apply that idea of emotions to the wider spectrum of the various emotions that we experience throughout our day, I think it's pretty powerful. It's definitely something that has helped me. I want to talk a little bit about empathy. My definition kind of alludes to it. The importance of empathy. It's the idea that you can look at someone else and try to feel what they're feeling, and put yourself in their shoes for a second. And it's something that can be hard to do. And the idea behind emotional intelligence is that some people are better at it than others, and I think that great leaders are good at empathizing with others. This next point is impulse control, and this is something I've gotten better at as a result of going through the material and reading books and so on and so forth. I still have them, but I want to talk about a little study that was done by Daniel Goldman. It's called the marshmallow test, and you may or may not have heard of it, but long story short, they put some children in a room, and they gave them a marshmallow and said, if you can hold out for, I think it was 15 minutes, and not eat this second marshmallow, then, if you don't eat this marshmallow, then we'll give you 2. And there were a certain amount of them that were able to, refrain from eating it, and then there were others that gobbled up the marshmallow quickly. And they followed them throughout life, and it turns out that there are huge implications for those that had, proper impulse control, were better at than others. Just thought that was really cool. And if you would have given me that marshmallow as a child, maybe even now, I probably would have eaten it. And the thing that I like about this idea of emotional intelligence is that whatever your level of emotional intelligence is, it's not your destiny. It's not like IQ, where IQ is relatively static. With emotional intelligence, if you make an effort, you can get better. And that's something that resonated with me when that came up in class and through the past 2 years as I've been researching it. The next section is titled Leadership on the Ground Level. The reason I chose to speak about this particular type of leadership is because I feel like sometimes there's a disconnect, especially in the corporate world, between top level leadership and those essentially on the front lines. I think that a good leader is down there in the trenches talking to their staff. How are their staff feeling about their job? How do they feel about the direction that the company is going? I've been in companies where this isn't happening at all, where there's a huge disconnect between top leadership and the people who are actually, doing the work. And that's something that came up in one of the classes, a year or two ago, and something that stuck with me. And it serves as a reminder to me that no matter what level I achieve in leadership, to never be disconnected from the people who are on the ground level. You need to be in tune with those people. You need to empathize with them. And I think that, that's true not only of those at the front line, but also, your middle managers and so on and so forth. The key is that you need to be in tune. And I think that it's a plight for many leaders that they're not. I think it's something, that no matter what level of leadership you're at, it's something you can work on and get better. The next section is corporate social responsibility, and I want to focus a little bit on the environmental issues. When it comes down to it, you look at something like the pollution and the climate change and all the things that we've got going on, it's like watching a train wreck in slow motion. It's so disheartening, and I'm thinking we've got so many smart people at so many different levels of leadership in government, business, so on and so forth, and this is what's going on. we still haven't gotten this thing under control. It's gut-wrenching when you really take some time to think about the reality of what's going on here and the adverse effects that are definitely coming in years to come. And then when you dig into it, you learn that in order for our planet to be okay over the long term, we need to not only slow what's happening, we need to reverse it. Is that happening? We're so far from reversing it. And I think that one goal of this program was to raise our awareness about the reality of what's happening, so that as we rise into leadership positions, we can try to make a difference. And I think that it starts with, as far as us as individuals, I think it starts with our behavior. We've got to fundamentally change the way that we think about CSR and the way that we behave. And there's no denying it that one person or a group of people's behavior is going to make that much of a difference, but we've got to start somewhere. And I do think that the big key is the leadership of business turning this thing around. And I do think that we need the help of government to make that happen. You're not going to change decades and decades of dogma of businesses cost cutting. Cost cutting. That's what it's always been. And all of a sudden you want somebody to invest more. That's probably going to cost some money in the short run. It might not even yield that much in the long term. But we've all got to get to an understanding that sacrifices in the short term are not only needed, they're necessary, for our various societies in the long term. There was a telling moment, and this was in one of the first on-campus classes that I had, and we were asked, if we were in a startup, if we were the CEO of a startup, we were starting a business, would CSR be at the top of our list? And the truth was, it wasn't for any of us. We're all thinking, we're trying to halfway think about this. If we're really about to launch a startup, we've got a lot to do. We've got a lot of work to do and a lot of priorities, and that wasn't one of them. And I think that if you asked us the same question today, our answer would be different. At any rate, recruiting and hiring is the next section. This is something that's always fascinated me. I've always been interested in it. I don't know why. And one of the biggest takeaways for me in this course is that I realized that recruiting and hiring can be very hard. It's hard work. And I think before this program, I had this idea, I think I had a naive perspective. That people want the jobs, and if you're the one doing the hiring, then you're the one who decides who gets those jobs. And while that's true to an extent, that's not recruiting and hiring. You have to go out and find the talent. You've got to attract them. You've got to recruit them. That's why we hear of headhunters, going out and finding this top talent. And if you want an organization to be successful, whether it's a small startup or, a Fortune 500 company, those hires matter. And if you make a wrong hire along the way, there are financial implications for it. You've got to really nail it. And the margin of error for recruiting for any business, I think, has to be very low. I read a book, and this has been, I think, before the program started, or maybe about the time that I started the program. It was called Match, and it's by Dan Erling. It's a book about hiring, and Dan has this idea that if you are disciplined enough, you can employ a strategy that will get you the right hire every time. And after reading the book a few times, I disagree a little, for the sake of thinking for myself. I think that that's tough, but he did make a lot of good points. Um, and one of the things that I learned from that, he was talking once about how if you're in a business, if you're in a hiring position in a business, your expectations and standards will go up and down according to the talent that's available and the state of the business, and that can't happen. And looking back, I can guarantee you that if I was in a hiring position and I hadn't read that book, then my standards for who I should hire would fluctuate, and it can't be that way. You have to have a set of standards that is static and that are high, and that's the only way that you're going to be able to build a business or help a business maintain a certain level of success. So that was huge for me. The last one is culture. Every business has a culture. Some are formal, some are informal, and obviously a lot are both. The culture of a company, I think, is an important aspect. I think that culture starts with leadership. It's the leader that sets the tone for how these people are behaving. That person sets an example for how they're going to carry themselves, what kind of initiatives they'll take, and so on and so forth. And this is a little bit of a digression, but one that ties in. It was a course we had, and this is back when I was in the original cohort on campus with Dr. Turner, I believe. And she gave us this assignment, and she asked us to essentially put ourselves in the shoes of a CEO. And I picked the CEO for the company that I work for. And I cannot tell you how incredible the perspectives were that I gained from doing that. Because when you put yourself in that position, when you really sit and stop and think about, okay, if I were the CEO of this company, you really go there. It's unbelievable. It's daunting and liberating at the same time to think about, okay, if I'm the CEO, these are my obligations, these are my responsibilities, these are the things that I'm being held accountable of, these are the people that are answering to me and looking to me. It was such an incredible assignment. I'd even venture to say that it was the best assignment throughout the entire program, because that's what we're looking to do with a program like this. You want to give people a new perspective that they didn't have before that helps them in whatever their leadership endeavors are in the future. And I thought that was huge. It's asking here for a reflection as far as the value of the final seminar here. And to tell you the truth, I think that Dr. Falvey nailed it. I really do. It was probably one of the best courses in the program, and here's why. This whole time, we've been working towards something. We've been learning and polishing, and we get to this course, and to have some freedom to have a platform where we can say, okay, this is what I want to do, and now I'm going to go out and do it. I thought it was huge. I thought the autonomy was a big strength to this course, and I know that you want to apply a critical mind to something like this. So for the sake of feedback, I think that it would have been good to include the discussion dynamic of it, as we did in some of the other courses. I think it would have been good for us to go in and reflect, about everybody else's projects, whatever they were. And I can assume the reason that we didn't do that is because those were heavy workloads to begin with. But if anything, I would add that. The program as a whole, I think that one of the things that intrigued me a lot, especially at the beginning, was that the program wasn't just about business leadership. It's about organizational leadership. And that can mean so many things. And I think that right away, it widened our perspectives of what leadership is. what does leadership mean to us, the capacity in which we lead. And my time on campus, I think it was about a year and a half, was an incredible experience. When you take a group of people that is diverse as we all were and like-minded, when you're at our age and you're paying money to go back to school into a program like this, let's face it, it's because you probably have your priorities at least halfway straight. So when you get a group of people like that in one room, the conversations that we had and the class discussions, they were thoughtful, they're articulate, and I think that those conversations sharpened us as individuals, and as speakers. Can't say enough good about it. And I thought, when I took this position to come to Texas, that it wouldn't be as good online. And while of course I'm biased to the in-class experience, I was impressed. In some ways, I feel like I got the best of both worlds, because I forged those relationships and had the benefit of organic conversation and hands-on learning in the class. But there's something about online that forces you to, how do I put this? It teaches you how to communicate in a different way, and it definitely sharpened me. So that said, am I biased toward the on-campus? Yeah, but I think that you all did a hell of a program with the online as well. For my first project, I put together a business plan for a coffee shop. And at my last glance at it, I was up to like 20 plus pages. And I didn't know that. I had just been working. and that impressed me a little bit, because I'm thinking 20 pages and none of it's fluff. All this is stuff where I've really dug in and researched. It wasn't just putting stuff on paper for the sake of an assignment, for the sake of doing a paper. And it helped me dig into the reality of owning a business. The financial aspect of it, the toll that it can take on a person. All the various stresses and obligations. It was huge, and I think that it was just very telling. And I think that it's something that I'll probably pursue, within the next decade or so. Of course, you never know. Life takes us on different paths. I also wanted to comment about the book, Drucker's 5 Questions. That was a good book. I ended up reading it twice. A lot of insights about the millennials. I think it was a little bit inspiring, and it was cool because you could tell, not just for me, it was obviously applicable to my project, but you could tell that it was one of those that fit, that you could make fit no matter what your project was, or no matter what goal you're trying to achieve. As far as plans for the future, well, I plan to use what I learned in every aspect of my life. And I say that wholeheartedly. I think it's a strength of this program that you can say something like that and mean it. You can say that this program has sharpened me in so many ways that I couldn't even escape it if I wanted to. It's embedded in me now. And I think that there's other programs out there where when you get out of it, you can say, okay, this program, what I've learned from it is applicable here and here, and that's it. And that's not the case with this program. And I think that's part of what makes it special, is that it is so far-reaching, and works to transform you on a fundamental level. The nice thing about a program like this is that when you get done, you feel like you did something. And I really do feel like I'm a better leader because of this program. And leadership is many things. We know that. But at the end of the day, leadership is about empathy and sincerity. And it doesn't matter, what capacity in which you're leading. I think that if you apply those characteristics, then that can serve as the tipping point to you achieving, whatever goal it was that you were out to achieve. And I think I'll leave it at that. But before I go, I just want to say that I'm so thankful for this program and all the hard work that went into it. I didn't produce any of this, and I just got to enjoy the fruit of the labor. Um, but I feel like I was a part of it, and I know a lot of people put in a lot of hard work to make this happen, and I think that it speaks to the leadership of Baker. For them to have the presence of mind to understand that education is evolving and that we're part of that evolution. At the end of the day, when you really boil it down, I think education is about improving people's lives, especially higher education. And that's what has happened. My life has been improved. So thank you. And Dr. Falvey and everyone who made the program possible.